Okay, we've sorted it out. Apologies.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rottenberg. The second set of minutes is from November 15th, 2022, regular council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I will move to adopt the minutes.
Oh, sorry, minutes, sorry. It's actually written as agenda here. Councillor Hoare and a seconder. Councillor Kennington. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councillor Hoare? None opposed, so carried. Motion carries. Public delegation, public input and delegations. We have 2 delegations today. Please limit your presentation to 10 minutes. We have Sergeant Kevin Smith from the RCMP. Or do we? So if you if you would like to go over to the podium there, please.
Thank you very much for having me.
You'll have to speak really closely into that microphone. Thank you.
How's that? Can you? Thanks. Thank you very much for having me. This is my partner, Corporal Greg Young. I've been recently transferred to 100 Mile House as the new commander up there, and he'll be replacing me until new commander is named. So that process usually takes a couple months, and so today was my last day in uniform, and Greg will be here full-time Monday to Friday to answer any questions you might have or need any help.
Congratulations on the transfer.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of weird to see the weather outside. This is what I'm going to, so I don't know what I was thinking. I just have a short update of how the year went and where our resources are going and any crime trends. So in 2021, we had a total file count of 1,475. In 2022, we had a 12% drop down to 1,299. That could be several contributing factors. We spent most of the summer short-staffed with only 3 people. So our proactive work would have been down. But also I think we had a different demographic visiting Ucluelet than we did in the previous year. So we had a lot less backcountry campers, a lot less theft. Our violent statistics are down, and it was replaced with lost property files, things like that, parking complaints, traffic complaints. So I think those would be contributing factors to the lower file count. One area that we did have an increase is our property crime. With the theft of catalytic converters. We had someone come into town for several months and hitting 6 to 12 cars in a night and then leaving town again. But in the recent 3 months or so, we haven't had any thefts. So I don't know if that person that was doing it was caught somewhere else or what, but that was our main files for the summer. It was becoming a weekly occurrence. And we also had this year one group come into town with counterfeit $100 bills. They were hitting the entire island, and the great small town of Ucluelet had them up on Facebook and alerting us, and they were all arrested and are still in custody. They were the three primary targets for Nanaimo, Parksville, Campbell River, and Courtney. And they came to Ucluelet, and we got them in Ucluelet. So it's a good news story. So yeah, don't do crime in Ucluelet, because the town will see it right away. And with our resources, like I said, in the summer, we were down to 3 members, which was very difficult to police 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with 3 people. But now we're fully staffed and look good all the way into May, when we have 1 member transferring out, and then the rest of the members will be here for still 3 years. So has a pretty good outlook for the coming years. The last time I was here with council, you supported us with a letter to obtain further resources. I have not heard any news on that other than they're working on it. I'm hoping with the announcement with the province of all that money, the 230 million, that they'll start funding further positions in smaller towns. I just returned from the North District conference, and they're going through the same thing of positions being frozen, and there's just not a lot of people coming in. So hopefully this year that'll mean with the money that we'll get another member here. And that's it for me. Is there any questions?
Does council have any questions?
I do.
Councillor Hoare?
I'm just wondering, you said 1 member is transferring out in May. Do we know this far in advance whether somebody's coming in to replace them at this point?
What usually happens is I send in a request 4 months before they transfer out, and that initiates the process, and then the search will go out. It's Constable Yannick Harry that's due out, and he's a specialized position of Indigenous Policing Section. So their process will be a little different than normal GD or general duty side. So their call out will go to all other Indigenous Policing Section members to see if any of those people want to transfer here. So I have less say in who comes in.
And is your full complement 5 or 6 members?
5.
5, and that includes the Indigenous officer.
Yes. So we have a sergeant and 4 constables, one of those being IPS.
Any other questions from councillors? Well, good luck in your new endeavour, and thank you for coming to report to us.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a joy to be here, and I'm sad to leave, but thank you for all the support, and I'll be back when I retire.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
The second delegation is from WildSafe BC, Pacific Rim. Mr. Hansen and Ms. Paquette, welcome.
So thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to report on the activities of the 2022 WildSafe BC program in Ucluelet. My name is Bob Hansen, and this is my 5th season as the community coordinator. And this year we were very fortunate in that Marianne and I were able to share the position, which really had big benefits for the program and for our communities. And I'll turn it over to Marianne.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for having us. So as Bob said, my name is Marianne Paquette, and I'm the other co-coordinator for the program this year. This is my 3rd season with WildSafe BC. For the past 2 years, I was working for the Hithatsumakoa program.
Okay. Teamwork. damp. So in this presentation, I'll provide an overview of wildlife activity and human-wildlife coexistence challenges that were faced this year, and also opportunities seized to try and keep wildlife wild and the community safe. And I'll use this slide to go through a few numbers that illustrate both troubling numbers as well as some very positive developments. And they'll provide a context for the latter part of our presentation where we'll talk about the roadmap ahead. So to start, there were 8 food condition bears lethally euthanized this year. 35 sheds, structures accessed by bears. 9 freezers. No worries. Maybe I hit the wrong button. Okay. All right. So 9 outdoor freezers, a recent report. 4 commercial grease bins. 35 vehicles entered, and 8 chicken coops and 21 unsecured commercial bins. There were also 51 close encounters, and on 4 occasions pepper spray or bear spray was used, and 7 instances of bears entering a building with people inside. So I'll pass this off to Marianne.
So I'll do a little bit of an overview of the activities that have happened from mid-April to the end of November. So these activities involve education, outreach, training, and other conflict prevention activities. And I'll be sharing the most up-to-date numbers. You'll notice some of them are off from our PowerPoint there just because of the activities that have happened in the past 2 weeks. So there was 6 WildSafe Ranger presentation to school-aged children, reaching a total of 190 students and teachers. There's been 23 wildlife awareness and safety presentation and other types of training sessions, reaching a total of 320 participants. There's been 5 door-to-door activities in 7 neighborhoods experiencing high wildlife activity, and we delivered information packages to 370 residences. We hosted 8 display booths where we're able to answer questions about the local wildlife and also attract and management practices with both residents and visitors, reaching over 1,000 people. We've seen an increase of 10% on our Facebook page for the followers of the WildSafe BC Pacific Rim. And we've created over 46 educational posts. And these posts have been shared widely by a lot of our partners, and it has helped with our reach greatly. We now have 5 local businesses that have taken the WildSafe BC Business Pledge and have made the necessary changes to create an environment that's safe for their staff, the community, and the local wildlife. I'm not sure if it's me. Yeah, that still works. Awesome. Thank you. And actually 10 businesses now that are working towards the pledge. And there's 2 bear campsite campgrounds where we've been able to provide staff training this year. Maybe I'll continue without for a little bit. Not sure. Oh, here we go. Awesome. There's been 14 electric fences that have been installed this season with an additional 9 detailed consultation that have been provided for future projects. And there's now a total of 20 new bear-resistant bins that have been purchased by both residents and businesses. And finally, we've calculated the increase in people reached from 2021 to 2022, and there's been over a 90% increase, and that's due to the fact that the program was able to have 2 coordinators working on initiatives this year. And I'm just going to mention quickly the new Sort and Go Organics program. So a lot of you have probably received your bins, and we just wanted to take this opportunity to remind everyone that we have a really great opportunity here. There's over 2,000 bins, so about 2,800 bins that have been delivered on the West Coast. And these are bear-resistant bins that are not bear-proof, and we just need to make sure that everybody's keeping them well secured. So here are a few tips that we just wanted to share. So if people have a garage or a space inside their homes, that is the best place to keep these bins and keep these carts. But if that's not a possibility, we ask that you don't keep the bins inside a shed because sheds are no match for a bear. Instead, the bins can be kept outdoors as long as both clips on top are well secured, so 24/7. And the bins need to be kept clean on the outside, and also they need to be anchored so that an adult bear cannot drag it away. And the recycling needs to be cleaned thoroughly before it gets into the blue bin. So to anchor the carts, one method is to use a cement pier block. Since they have holes in the middle, so a chain can be threaded through that cement pier block with a 10-foot chain, and then these can be threaded through the 3-cart system, and with a carabiner at the end, it will allow for easy access to the bins when they need to go to the curb. And all of these items can be purchased at Windsor Plywood. And one last tip for people is if people are keeping their bins outdoors, is to just keep all the compost and garbage inside the house until the morning of pickup, if that's possible. Bring it to the bin only on the morning of pickup. And freezing smelly items and adding them only on the morning of pickup is really, really useful to reduce attractants, but also to reduce the smells indoors. So for more details, there is a lot of information on the website, so on the ACRD Sort and Go website. And there's also a video that's been made specifically on how to store these carts. And the video can also be found on our Facebook page. And here's a quick little, basically a visual of our season. So our season in picture, that I'll just put it on. Here, let's see if I can.
If you're able to double click on the image.
Oh, perfect,
All right. So now for the roadmap ahead. As we know, we've been through 2 very challenging bear-human seasons. So here's some key points. In Tofino, there's been a big step forward with the implementation of new wildlife attractant management bylaw, very specific to the needs of the community. And we're very hopeful that that will also be the case within the coming year in Ucluelet. And the curbside rollout, putting 2,800 bear-resistant bins into the hands of residents is a great step forward. adding a requirement to wild safe waste management practices within business license conditions as well as development permits is being looked at in the district of Tofino, and we're also hopeful for the same thing here. We had a very good meeting with Abby and Brittany discussing all of this recently. Would really love to see both communities, I think very important for both communities and Ucluelet in particular, to apply for Bear Smart status. And it's to signal to residents and businesses about the community's commitment to coexisting in the long term with bears. And a lot of great progress has made to meet all of the requirements of the Bear Smart application requirements. So Ucluelet, with the adoption of a bylaw, would meet all of the requirements for a Bear Smart community. So it's well within reach. The expansion of wildlife-related information and the availability of that information, it's been great working with Samantha and also local businesses on making that information easily accessible to residents and visitors. And also we've had discussions again with Abby on secure A-based multi-year funding requests for the WildSafe BC program to increase capacity and scope and continuity of the program. So we'd very much like to thank you for your support, and also thank you for your leadership and all that you've been doing over the recent years. Really come a long ways, and it's really been great working with you on keeping wildlife wild and Ucluelet safe.
Thank you, Paul. I'm not sure anybody at home could hear you because you weren't talking into the microphone, but we heard you, so that's all good. Does council have any questions? Councillor Hoare?
I always have something.
That's great.
Bob, is all the funding just from your supporters, or do you have any, is it grants? I just realized that I can't pull out of my brain how you guys are funded.
Yeah. Each year for Ucluelet, we make a request, and it's been support has been provided as a grant, and we renew our requests each year. In the ACRD, they created a line item within their operational budget and provided 5 years of secure funding. And we're hoping that same model can be adopted in Ucluelet and Tofino, just for that certainty, and just in the granting process, never quite sure how it's going to go. So, and then that slide that came up at the end of our little video, you could see all of those logos. The support in both communities from the business community has been phenomenal, and it's been growing each year. So that's what gave us the ability to have both of us working this year. So everything's going in a good direction.
Any other questions from council? Councillor Anderson?
Was there an increase this year? Did you find in like vehicles being entered by bears? Was that just me or?
Oh no, that cropped up last year as a brand new category, and right at the tail end of the year, and it was a bear here in town. Just seemed to hit on that, and actually, I think Lauren White Place did 8 to 10 vehicles in one night. But that was right till end of the season. And then it seemed that bear came back bright and early this spring. And the very first 2 reports were bear in vehicles at 2 of the same addresses. And then it went from there. But what was a real unexpected twist was that a bear in Millstream and multiple bears in Tofino also hit on the same strategy. So at the peak of the summer, we had 4 or 5 different bears all opening vehicles. So yeah, it's a head scratcher for sure. And we'll see what next year brings.
We witnessed a bear opening my husband's car door very easily and started climbing inside, and then we got pots and pans to scare it away. But yeah, it's amazing how they've adapted to learn how to open cars.
They are adapting every day of their lives. They're always trying new things, and they're so intelligent, and they're very determined once they decide. Yeah.
And I had a question for you. The Sort and Go, that program rolled out last year in Port Alberni, did it not? And have you any experience with how that affected the wildlife in Port Alberni?
We don't have a clear picture of how it's gone in Port Alberni. Do know that they have been able to divert, I believe it's close to 50% of the volume away from the landfill with the organics program. So we do know from other communities that have done this sort of rollout that the keeping of the bins indoors, like in a house or in a closed garage, is essential to the safety of people and wildlife. And if that's not possible, if they are stored outside, just the necessity of having them anchored in some fashion, because they will try to drag them into the forest. And if they can get them into the forest where they can work on them for a few hours, they can break into those carts. They're called bear resistant, and they're certified bear resistant, but they're not totally bear proof. If they have enough time and it's the right bear, they'll figure out a way. So we just have to prevent, just like with the vehicles, we have to prevent them learning a new skill. We've been putting that messaging out for 6 months now, and it's also a specific clause in the ACRD bylaw update that they've made, and also in the Tofino Wildlife Attractant Management bylaw, and hopefully in the Euclid bylaw that may be coming.
Thank you. And one last question. Are there any resources available for accommodation providers to train their guests to use these things properly?
You can answer that.
There is the video that I mentioned a little bit earlier. That's a really great resource where people can see what the anchoring mechanism looks like. But in terms of training, it's nothing that's really any long training that's needed. It's really making sure that the 2 clips on tops are secured, and then that the anchoring mechanism is always in place. So if someone did have the cement block and the chain threaded through, the only thing that the person would need to do to put it at the curb is just unlock the carabiner, take the bin they need, and bring it to the curb, unlock the bin, and then once they bring it back, make sure that it's nicely locked, and then just thread everything back together. So pretty straightforward. But the video that we promoted has all the information for that.
You could mention the staff training as part of the WildSafe Business Pledge program.
Yeah, and so this is something that we do as part of WildSafe BC. So at the moment, because our season is ending, we won't be able to provide any staff training during the winter. But come the spring, any businesses that is interested to get any training on that is something that we do, and we meet with people, with staff. We can go to staff accommodation, we can go to businesses and talk about everything wildlife, including how to stay safe and keep wildlife well while they're at home, but also at work.
Thanks. I'm not too worried about the accommodation providers. I'm more worried about the guests.
Oh, for vacation rentals. Oh, right. So there are resources in terms of posters and things like that that can be provided, but there is a need for each vacation rental to see what their needs are and what are their guests going to be doing in terms of the waste management. So one thing that we could recommend is making sure that guests only put the compost in something indoors and keep the garbage indoors, and then either have the accommodation provider, put everything into the bin on the morning of pickup, or have someone that is hired to do that specifically.
Great, thank you.
Just add quickly, as part of the WildSafe Business Pledge, engagement with a number of businesses is that we are really promoting, and a number are doing this, is they're sending out links to the information that we showed to their guests as part of their confirmation of booking. So they're sending it out with their booking confirmations. They're also providing information in the rooms, and then we have developed posters and such that, like Airbnb operators, they can put it in their binder of community information. And so we're working on trying to get it out in every means possible.
That's a great idea, incorporating it into the confirmation. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Well, thank you for coming and presenting to us, and we always look forward to seeing you. Any unfinished business? Seeing none, there is one bylaw item today. Bylaw item 7.1 is Cemetery Management Amendment Bylaw number 1323. This report is by the Director of Parks and Recreation. Take it away, Ms. Fortune.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Good. Great. Before you have a recommendation that Council give first, second, and third reading to the District of Ucluelet Cemetery Management Amendment Bylaw number 1323, 2022. As you may remember, Council and staff received a request for installation of raised memorials within the lower cemetery that would match an existing memorial. By giving 3 readings to the bylaw, it allows for families with multiple lots that have raised memorials to match those memorials for future interments in the lower section. Is there any questions?
Any questions for Abby? No? I see there is a staff recommendation. Would council like to make that motion?
I'll move that.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed and carried. Thank you, Ms. Fortune. There are 6 report items today. The first report item is 8.1 2023 Council Conference Attendance. This report is by the Manager of Corporate Services, Mr. Rotenberg.
Through the mayor. Council members frequent between 4 and 5 council conferences annually. They're listed in this report. From time to time, council members attend this conference called FCM, but it's further abroad. So historically, maybe the mayor has gone once in their term because it's quite expensive. What we're looking for today is some guidance regarding, first, what I should budget for these conferences, which translates into an equation related to how many council members will be attending each conference. The equation that we've broke down so far today is to have 3 council members attend the LGLA EOS. So I believe that's the elected officials seminars. It's a training program that they offer. For 5 members to attend AVICC, that's your regional sort of union, where you get to vote on resolutions and meet your colleagues, obviously, and then also attend workshops. Under the current budget, we have 0 council members attending FCM because of the cost. And then we have all the council members attending the Union of British Columbia Municipalities convention. That is quite an expensive conference, but it's a really important conference because you get to meet your colleagues, and oftentimes you meet with ministers at that conference, as well as ministry staff members. And typically all of council attends that, or at least while I've worked for the district, all of council has attended. Finally, we have the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance. I believe it's called the Summit. It's it's a economic development summit where business leaders come together along with other public servants and elected officials to discuss business-specific issues to the island, as well, I believe, to the coastal areas. So I think Powell River and Sunshine Coast is kind of brought into that equation as well. So what we're looking for right now is confirmation of this $43,800 budget. That budget, as I said, would it includes this sort of a 3, 5, 0, 5, 3 equation: 3 to attend the first, 5 to attend the second, 0 to attend FCM, 5 to attend UBCM, and 3 to attend VIEA. We're also looking for a resolution to identify whom exactly would be attending the Local Government Leadership Academy Elected Official Series, because only 3 of 5 would be attending that under this recommendation. The second recommendation, or the second option, which is not what we're recommending today, would be for everyone to attend each of these conferences, with the exception of FCM, where 1 member would attend. For clarity, this budget, $43,800, spans 2 different budget lines, one of which is the per diem, the council member per diem meeting budget line, so that's sort of a payroll budget line, and the other is the literal attendance at the conference. Given this recommendation, so what I'm recommending here, the $43,800 recommendation, we wouldn't have to make any changes to the budget from last year to this year. Otherwise, we would have to do the equation, figure out exactly how much money we want to spend, and then I'd have to budget accordingly. Do give me time if you'd like to change any of the math here, i.e. 1 person to attend one, and 3 to attend, and 5 to attend the next, and I can get you that number, and so we can get that equation right.
Thank you, Mr. Rotenberg. I had a suggestion, which I'd like Council's opinion on. I kind of think it's important that all 5 of us attend all 4 of those seminars for the first year, and then maybe from year 2, 3, and 4 go back to this 3-5-5-3 formula, because that way everybody gets a chance to see what these conferences are about, and then 3 can decide next year which 3 they want to attend, the LGLA and the VIEA Summit. Councillor Hoare.
I'll toss my 2 bits in because I've attended all of these. I agree with Your Worship that all of us should attend that elected officials seminars, the first LGLA. There's a lot of really important stuff, and I know that if I hadn't attended that, I wouldn't have a clue about a lot of things that go on. So I think that's really important. I agree. After that, it could be 2, even 2 or 3. And then I agree. AVICC and UBCM are huge networking things. AVICC is specific to the coastal communities in the island, so you meet a lot of the really small locals, and then UBCM is that bigger community, so the other resort municipalities, and as Mr. Rotenberg said, getting to meet ministers and things. So everybody attending that one seems like a no-brainer. The VIEA, I've attended it. It's good, but I don't think all 5 of us need to attend it. If we did 2 or 3, we could switch off. Somebody goes this year, somebody goes next year. It's very economic. It really is focusing on economic summit information and business information, and it's really good. But if we're getting a copy of the State of the Island, which we do, they produce a State of the Island report every year. And so we get that copy, and there's a lot of really interesting information on what's going on economically on the island. But I don't necessarily think all 5 of us need to attend. So my formula was 5-5, 5-3, 2 or 3. Obviously, nobody to FCM. But
And can I hear from the other councillors?
Obviously, I'd like to keep the budget as low as possible. The training sessions are obviously the most important, and if 3 people are going, it should be the 3 new councillors. Sending one person to, I can't remember which one you said, the economic conference. I'm just wondering if it makes sense for you to sort of go with one of the new councillors to that to sort of lead them through the process, if that's necessary, because I've never been to one. Or if it's, on rails and you just go and travel through that.
yeah, well, I mean, my theory was 3 at most, but if you do 3, the math comes out to 48,000. So if we did only 2, as you say, maybe an old hand. I know the mayor really enjoys that particular conference, so it could be the mayor plus one other person. And then do that kind of switch off over the course of the years. I don't know. It just seems like that is one that we could have fewer at. We'd still have some presence. We'd still, the unfortunate thing is not being able to attend all the workshops, but that is the nature of the beast when you're at a conference, and you can't ever be at everything.
So the suggestion is 5-5-5-3. Correct, Councillor Hoare?
Yeah, I mean, or we go down to as few as 2 at Bahia, but I mean, I think 3, if we can scrape that extra little bit out of the budget, 4380 to 40, so that'd be 4,200 we had find.
We did save some money in 2020 and 2021 because all the conferences were virtual. So I know that doesn't just sit in a pot somewhere.
And I know we're not allowed to print new money, correct, Ms. Monteith, yes.
But we did save money by none of us going to anything for those 2 years. So that's why I kind of thought with a brand new council, I really would like to see all 5 of us go to all 4 of these, is my thought. Councillor Anderson?
These are all in Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
Am I correct? 'Cause I think we should all. I have to defer to both of Councillor Hoare and yourself, because I have no idea how important these are, and I get the idea, but I have to defer to what you think on this, because I mean it's what you're saying makes sense to me, but yeah, I really, it's tough for me to say.
I really see value in all these conferences because it's great teamwork building for ourselves, as well as networking with our counterparts. And yeah, I learn a ton of stuff every time I go to these conferences, and that's been 8 years. So I really look forward to having our new councillors, especially having that learning experience, because it's pretty incredible. So, how would you like to proceed, Mr. Rotenberg?
Through the mayor, I can present the resolution associated with what you're submitting. Council can move and second
And vote.
if that's the approach they would like to take. And then, of course, we could present a different resolution if that better reflected what council was trying to do.
That would be great, thank you.
Let's see if
I'm just feeling that if we were trying to bring that budget number down a little bit, the only one, because I agree, networking super important, and the team building also super important, and that's why those three first ones I find vital. I just don't think that Bahia is as vital, and that's.
It's the smaller of the 4, for sure.
Oh yeah.
It is in Nanaimo, so it's not a long ways to go. It's always in Nanaimo. I've enjoyed it for the number of years I went.
Is there still an option to attend virtually to any of these, or was that just during the pandemic?
I think that was just during the pandemic.
That is also my understanding.
Yeah, I know for UBCM and AVICC, they said they weren't doing a hybrid meetings because it was actually really difficult and very expensive. And I think VIA this past year was only in person, correct? Yeah, I don't think there was that option either.
Yeah, and none of us went to VIA because we had our training scheduled the week that happened. Yeah.
We could carry you around on FaceTime and just, if you wanted to, you can see, just a little GoPro or something.
GoPro on your head.
Okay, we have a motion. If someone would like to move that. Can anybody read it?
I'll make a motion that council authorize all council members to attend the Local Government Leadership Academy Elected Official Seminars, 2023 Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Convention, 2023 Union of BC Municipalities Convention, and 2023 Annual Vancouver Island Economic Summit.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? So just to be clear, this can be revisited next year so that we can go back to fewer people attending. Thank you. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? And that motion carries. And there's a second one, Councillor Kennington.
I'll move that council direct staff to include $51,000 in the 2023 council budget for council conferences.
And a seconder,
I'll second it.
Councillor Hoare. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Item 8.2, the 2023 Annual Council Meeting Schedule. Again, presented by Mr. Rotenberg, Manager of Corporate Services.
Through the mayor. This report introduces council's annual schedule. Each year, council adopts a schedule for their regularly scheduled meetings. Of course, there's always the potential for additional meetings, known as special council meetings. This schedule includes both regular council meetings, regular Harbor Authority meetings, as well as regular Committee of the Whole meetings. There are 3 Committee of the Whole meetings. The first of those meetings is typically dedicated for council to receive grant and aid applications. So that's a process that you will all be becoming pretty familiar with. At that meeting, community groups that are applying for funds from the District of Ucluelet can pitch their application. So it's usually about 5 minutes where they pitch their application either for cash or for what are called in-kind contributions. So that's free rent. The Harbor Authority meetings, council sits as the Harbor Authority to address issues related to our harbor. And then the regular council meetings are those meetings that are scheduled regularly. A couple things to note here. All the meetings, we're proposing that the meeting continue to be at 4 o'clock. The vast majority of the meetings would be on Tuesdays at 4 o'clock, with the exception of the ones listed there, which we had to work around some other scheduling conflicts, some attendance at conventions, and ensuring that there's time for people to be able to commute from here to the convention. So what we're looking for today is a resolution to confirm that schedule. Otherwise, if council decides to take a different direction, let us know what direction you'd like to take, and we'll come back with an amended schedule because we want to check for other conflicts. The other thing to keep in mind here is that there will be meetings on Tuesdays after long weekends. So keep that in mind. It's hard to schedule. So we're hoping that it works for everybody and we can move forward. And of course, council could adjust the time of the meetings as well. So we're just looking for direction today. Once this is adopted, we have to give notice in accordance with the community charter. There's a slew of rules that we have to follow there, so the public knows when council meets. Are there any questions that I can field?
Thank you. Does council have any questions for Mr. Rutenberg?
I have one. I was looking at the meeting schedule for last year, and it looked like on a regular basis there was one that was canceled. Like basically, are those?
So your procedure or council's procedure bylaw authorizes council to reschedule or cancel meetings. It also authorizes the mayor to reschedule or cancel meetings. And where there is nothing on the agenda, it authorizes the corporate officer to cancel meetings. I believe some of the cancellations were due to sort of scheduling issues. I think there was another one where everyone was sick. Stuff happens, stuff comes up. Typically when there's a cancellation, what happens is either the agenda is moved to the next regular council meeting, so that's when you deal with it under unfinished business, or a special council meeting would be scheduled in its place. Those special council meetings, we give notice in a slightly different way because the community charter provides council more latitude in terms of how that notice is given. So just because they're canceled on that schedule doesn't mean they weren't rescheduled as a special council meeting to happen subsequently.
Any other questions from council? Councillor Anderson?
Councillor Mafti hasn't had any, he's not here, so I just wanted to make sure he didn't have any problem with 4 o'clock meetings or anything. If he's might have spoken to you, Dwayne.
As far as I'm aware, Councillor Mafti didn't have any conflicts at this point in time. If he does, we have provided this out to all of council. We're hoping that he's been able to take a look at it, but we haven't received anything indicating that this was a problematic time period.
Yeah, no, it works fine for me.
Okay, so let's talk about the 4 o'clock thing. Is everyone okay with 4 o'clock? And everyone's okay with Tuesdays? Okay, then I see there's a staff recommendation. Would council like to make a motion, please?
I got this one. I will move that council adopt the proposed 2023 annual council meeting schedule as presented in Appendix A to report number 22-161 and direct staff to give notice of the 2023 annual council meeting schedule.
And a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Kennington, any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed and carried. Item 8.3 is the 5-year financial plan meeting schedule, 2023 to 2027. And this report is provided by the Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Monteith.
Good afternoon, through the mayor. I was explaining in the orientation session for finance that the budget meetings are actually special council meetings. So I'm here before you today with a suggested schedule for a transparent process for our 5-year financial plan for 2023 to 2027. The schedule is attached. I have one correction already in that December 8th is at 1 o'clock, not at 12:30. And these dates are in and around the council meeting schedule that you just adopted. So generally speaking, I tried to stick with the Thursdays on the opposing week of a council meeting. Generally, they're about 3 to 4 hours long. We always encourage feedback throughout the process, but you can see on the schedule that we have an official public feedback period as well. So we have to have an actual ending date for that so I can package it together. And a tentative meeting in April, just in case we need to come back and talk about things like the revised assessment role or any kind of feedback that council needs to address. And then we pop back into our regular council meetings to do readings of both the bylaws. That's it.
Thank you. I do have one thing that popped out at me. The April 13th meeting is the day before AVICC, which is April 14th to 16th, and they really don't start that conference until 1 o'clock, so they don't have to feed us lunch, but they always have several morning tours to participate in, and so that would mean that we would all probably have to get to Nanaimo on the Thursday.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a tentative date, so we can certainly come back with a different suggestion for that date.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions? Councillor Hoare?
I'm just curious, do we have to stick with the 4 o'clock start? Thursdays are a day that I don't work. I know that my schedule is one of the ones that really messes up with council stuff, but I can certainly meet earlier because I do know these meetings are long, and sometimes it would be nice to do a 1 to 4 instead of a 4 to 7 or something, but that's just me.
We used to do them at 1 o'clock through the mayor, but yeah, I'm here regardless, so whatever you guys decide is fine with me.
I guess we'd need Councillor Mafty's input on that as well, because he does have a full-time job. Okay, so there is a staff recommendation. Would council like to make a motion? Councillor Anderson.
I recommend the council receive the 5-year financial plan meeting schedule for 2023 to 2027 as presented.
And a seconder.
I'll second it, but I'll double check. Do we need to, because there was the amendment of the time on the appendix, do we need to have an amendment to it?
I think that would be the appropriate approach. So a motion to amend the appendix so the the December 8th, 2022 meeting is held at 1 p.m. rather than 12:30. Then you can receive as amended.
Okay, so can I move that amendment?
Yes. So what I'd recommend in this case is that we just abandon the first motion.
Okay.
So you have a mover. We don't have a seconder at this point. So we'll just leave it on the floor. It can die there.
Stab it once or twice.
I was looking for the not finding it. And then
wait, mic on.
You can amend the schedule as attached and then receive it.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Lawrence.
Just a one note for council, if I may, is that by receiving the report, this allows us just to publish it and give us an idea of when these schedules are occurring. We're not adopting the schedule, so we don't have to come back to council to do amendments and changes to that schedule, and there will be special meeting notification requirement. So this is more of a guideline as to what we're thinking, so we can just do a quick amendment to this so we have an idea of what council's after, but it's not like the council regular meeting schedule, which is adopted as required under the community charter. So special meeting notices will be going out in advance, so it's fairly easy to change this as we move forward.
Okay, so Councillor Hoare, would you like to make a motion to amend the 5-year financial plan meeting schedule?
All right. So can I do it? Moving that council receives the 5-year financial plan meeting schedule, 2023 to 2027, as presented with the amendment of December 8th, starting at 1 p.m. as opposed to 12:30 p.m.
Is that sufficient, Mr. Rotenberg? Or do we have to amend the schedule and then receive it?
I think that Councillor Hoare's resolution is clear. My understanding of the resolution is that the schedules to be received is exactly the same, except the December 8th, 2022 meeting starts at 1 p.m. rather than 12:30. Is that correct?
Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Carrington, any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed and carried. The next report is item 8.4, development permit for 259 Boardwalk Boulevard. This report will be presented by the Director of Community Planning. And after the Director presents, there will be an opportunity for the applicant or their agent to address Council. Welcome, Mr. Gregg.
There we are. Thank you, through the chair. Council, first of all, may note that there are two very similar reports for items 8.4 and 8.5. There are two reports. This would be for two different permits. They are neighboring strata lots A and B with one owner. So they are separate. So in my comments here, I'll talk about some commonalities between the two of them because they are very similar. So they would need separate council resolutions, if you will, but also present them together and just for brevity and to see if there are any questions because there's a lot of commonalities. So this really
it's really difficult to hear you. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought this would be a better microphone, but maybe I have to lean into it a bit. We'll try this. How's that? So so this is an application. Each of these applications are for 2-unit resort condominium buildings and associated landscaping at 259 and 261 Boardwalk Boulevard. And just briefly touch on some of the things that were highlighted in the report. There, a little bit of background. These are zoned for tourist accommodation. There's a green space covenant protecting an area around basically the rear 15 meters of the property, but that also overlaps with an environmental development permit area. So one of the elements is this development permit, or the permits that are being sought are both for the environmental shoreline development permit area as well as for the form and character in the commercial area. And so the form and character, the plans are attached in the report. Just briefly, I'd say that the design of the building is consistent with the development permit guidelines and with the existing context of the neighborhood, the other buildings that have been constructed for tourist accommodation units in the area along Boardwalk Boulevard. There's landscape plans that are attached. The parking layout, as noted in the report, is somewhat different between the two plans. Could I have the next slide, please? So here are the buildings that there are similar in Boardwalk Boulevard. Basically, the two applications are the two very closely neighboring buildings here. So this plan is showing the buildings that would be on the two strata lots. So this is the two applications. Next slide, please. And so these are the landscape plans, very similar, but the landscape plan is showing that they would have separate driveways and parking areas. Next slide, please. Whereas the site plan shows a common driveway and common parking area. So there is a condition that we've added in there, essentially to clarify this, that we have a finalized landscape plan presented, and that includes some screening of the parking area as it goes forward. So I just wanted to highlight that. The environmental development permit area, again, I mentioned was for the marine shoreline. The environmental assessment identifies that the building site is clear of any of the areas that are really sensitive. Is staying out of the 20-meter area from the natural boundary, and that essentially part of the site is cleared, and that there'd be very little impact from the construction. That's what they're assessing. And as you may also note, there's a bit of a comment on a waterfront trail that there's a statutory right-of-way. It's a bit of a sidebar to the application, really, but is noted just there out of interest. The applicant has expressed interest in signing what is a newer, updated statutory right-of-way to properly allow for a potential future public pedestrian trail along the shoreline of Spring Cove. And with that, I just see if there's any questions. I understand the applicant may be traveling and unable to attend, but it is, as any time we have an application, it's good to see if perhaps they're online, and see if they have an opportunity to address council. Are there any questions about the report?
Any questions from council?
Which driveway configuration are they leaning towards? Like, you're asking for a more detailed landscape plan. Have they decided which of those two options?
I don't know. They presented the two, and that's an area of clarification. I don't have any further indication of whether one is going to be over the other.
And the other thing I noticed was the building looked like it was up on columns. Is that a fact, or are they basements? Because the elevations look slightly different than the 3D views.
Could we go?
Or the axonometrics.
Sorry. Would be, if we can share the slide, I'll just. The buildings along that does slope towards the shoreline, so often they are elevated or either kind of a half story or column space. With the next this slide here, yes.
Right, so you can see how the contours travel under the building. So it's not a basement there. That's basically on concrete pilings.
I believe it is pilings, but it's just bear with me. I'm going to flip to the. Just want to be able to reference the right page with the architectural plans.
It looks like pilings in the axonometric, but in the sections for the elevation, it's like a basement. So it's, those are two very different kinds of ground conditions for drainage and wildlife and whatnot. So it'd be nice to get clarity on that.
If you see on page, I believe it's 87 of your agenda, it appears that it's not habitable space.
Yeah, I guess my question is it more disturbed space, or is it going to be returned for natural drainage, which would happen in the event that they were doing columns as opposed to, a crawl space or slab on grade, or what they're doing?
I couldn't tell you what the drainage design or drainage plans are. That is something that would be reviewed at the building permit stage. But I believe it is a piling system that they're showing. That there's.
Like, as an environmental development permit, I think drainage is a pretty key consideration.
Absolutely, and so the development plans are reviewed by the QEP, the Qualified Environmental Professional, who look at the overall site and drainage. Essentially, that typically what we'd see in this is that it would be treated as that being impervious surface. That if it there's nothing specific in the QEP report that would be that points to drainage, or maintaining permeable surface within the footprint of the building in order to balance that.
I would like to encourage, if there is an opportunity to encourage the second narrower driveway with the parking spaces parallel to the front of the building, because I think it adds a little bit of interest. Currently, these buildings are literally the same building, which is fine, but we're, to add a little bit of interest at the front could be done with landscaping and hiding the cars behind that landscaping, as opposed to we have two driveways heading straight in. It's just a blank wall. So that's my 2 cents on the layout.
And through the mayor, the condition that was drafted was to essentially require that they have a final plan, including essentially have them come back and show how they'll be screening the parking area with some landscaping towards the street, because it is something that is not as successful on some of the existing properties along that street as one would hope, or how the guidelines should suggest that those parking areas be more screened.
That's all I got.
Any other questions?
I had-
Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, I had one. There's a tree protection. Was it 20-meter shoreline setback? And I know there's that backstory area. It's a big cliff there, and I just wanted to make a comment, or maybe a bit of a question. Going across the road onto High Focus, if you look over one of the units, not this particular one, but someone there has cut down the trees. It's pretty stark and obvious. So just one of the units is completely barren at front. Someone's cut them down within the last year or two. I'm just wondering if we can sort of keep track of people cutting down there's that row of trees that protects that area right in front of those. But so I don't know, one of those things that I'd like to make sure, because I know it would obviously be like a better view from cutting those down, but I think there's that row of trees that goes across there.
There's through the mayor. I'm not sure if it's the same one you're referring to. There's one property where there was a blowdown of a tree it was a couple of years ago. It did result in, I believe, a question and complaint that was investigated by our bylaw officer, and at the time they determined that tree had been, in fact, that it sort of fell into the cove. I'm not sure if that is the one you're referring to, because it is a standout. It's noticeable compared to the other ones, or whether this is something more recent.
That could be it, actually. That might be it. Yeah, that's possible. I'll find out. I'll go look.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gregg. Is the applicant attending online, Mr. Rotenberg?
If the applicant is attending online at this point in time, please click the raise your hand icon. There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. I see there's a staff recommendation. Would council like to make that motion?
I can do that. I will move that council authorize the Director of Community Planning to execute and issue development permit 22-10 for the property at 259 Boardwalk Boulevard to allow a 2-unit resort condo building and associated landscaping.
And a seconder?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Councillor Hoare?
So the information on landscaping and stuff all has to come in before they get building permits and stuff, right? Mr. Gregg?
Through the mayor, that is written as a condition of the development permit.
Perfect.
Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, so that motion carries. And 8.5, development permit for 261 Boardwalk Boulevard. Mr. Gregg.
Through the mayor, I have no additional detail to add on this one, just to see if there's any questions specific to this unit. Otherwise, this is the second half of that.
This is the same owner of both properties, is that correct?
Yes.
Any questions from council? I think we've covered our bases here. And again, the applicant is not online.
Through the mayor, no hands are raised.
Okay, I see there is a recommendation. Would council like to make that motion?
Right. I recommend that council authorize the Director of Community Planning to execute and issue development permit 22-11 for the property at 261 Boardwalk Boulevard to allow a 2-unit resort condo building with associated landscaping.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it. I guess I'll third it.
Councillor Hoare beat you to it. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, so that motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. The final report is 8.6, Environmental Development Permit for 736 Odyssey Lane. This report will be presented by the Planning Assistant, Ms. Whitney Brown. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. I'll just give Bruce one moment to pull up the slides.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Oh, well, that's good warning then. Now? Oh, I said good evening, so once more, good evening. So I'll be presenting this development permit 2216. It's for an environmental development permit, and the applicant is seeking this DP for the lot at 736 Odyssey Lane. You can see there in the LiDAR image. The applicant is planning the construction of a single-family dwelling and a secondary vacation rental use on this property. Next slide, please. So the property is in the marine, shoreline, and terrestrial ecosystem development permit areas. So as per environmental DP guidelines in the OCP, the applicant retained a qualified environmental professional, so QEP, to prepare a report on the environmental considerations of the site and develop recommendations to guide the development of it. So in that report, the QEP concludes that the proposed project, as currently projected, is not expected to have any adverse effects to wildlife or wildlife habitat, and no negative impacts to the marine ecosystems are anticipated, provided that the mitigation recommendations that they highlighted are followed. So those recommendations have, as per usual, been compiled by staff into the terms and conditions of the permit itself. So this is a fairly straightforward environmental development permit, and I'm available to answer any questions from council. And also they should provide an opportunity for the applicant to speak if they wish.
Thank you, Ms. Whitney Brown. Is the applicant online, Mr. Rodenberg? Oh, the applicant is in the audience. Lovely. Would you like to speak to your application? Okay, well, let's start with questions from council then.
I just have one question related to the wording of the recommendation. There's no mention of vacation rental in that, although I see it in other parts of the document. So if we're going for an environmental DP, one of the considerations is how much parking is required for a single family unit and a vacation rental, because it would be the difference of one parking space, which has its own environmental impact. So I'd just like to clarify, if we were to recommend this, would we amend this recommendation to include the vacation rental in the description?
So the recommendation, I believe, as it's currently worded, is for a single-family dwelling. So I'll just turn this question over to the Director of Planning.
I think this is just a housekeeping question, really. It's not.
I think it is a single family dwelling. It's a principal use, and that the vacation rental is a secondary use. The site plan. If you look at page 155 of your agenda, the site plan shows parking areas. They do show essentially extra parking areas. They show 4 parking spaces separate and a driveway. So at the building permit stage, that would be what we'd be sort of expecting, that would align with the development permit. If there were, say, additional parking that they were proposing at some time in the future because of a change in their accessory uses or something like that, then it may trigger a need to amend their development permit if they're changing the site plan. So it really is tied to what's the plans they're showing as the development and the footprint on site.
I have a follow-up to that, actually. Under the background, it says the applicant is planning the construction of a single-family dwelling with a secondary vacation rental use, but in the next few pages, it uses vacation rentals plural. So just wondering if it's one vacation rental or more than one? Mr. Craig.
I'm speaking off the top of my head here, but I believe the zoning allows for one or two in this on this site, and I believe like the single family dwelling would require a minimum of 2 parking spaces. In the vacation rental, each unit would require an additional parking space, so that if they have 2 vacation rentals, they would need a total of 4 parking spaces, and that's what's shown on the site plan. So I believe they are accommodating for the potential of having the 2 vacation rentals.
So that's taken into account by the QEP on this. So
That it really, the QEP is looking at, what's the footprint, the physical footprint, and they have shown those 4 parking spaces in their plans.
Councillor Hoare?
The diagram, what is it, Schedule 1? It's an Appendix B. I'm not sure what page of the agenda because I'm online. And I don't have it up as a PDF. But the 4 parking spaces it shows, parking spot 3 is where there are trees shown. So that would mean that trees were coming down to... I just because there are what appear to be green trees, and then there are what appear to be 2 gray trees. And I'm like, does that mean they are trees that are going bye-bye?
That's on page 155 of the agenda.
I believe they do mention that those are coming out.
Are you able to pull page 155 up?
We could if you or Mr. Rottenberg could. That is my understanding, is that the parking spaces or the access to them is superimposed over where some of the trees, with the construction of the house, there would be some tree removal. Yeah.
And any other questions? Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, that was just the wording in the actual application. It was on I think the second page. It just said potential, so I just didn't know if it was. I was just wondering myself if it was going to be the vacation rentals as well. But it is zoned for that, so.
If you'd like to go up to the podium, please. And just give your name and address first, please. Thank you. Yes, please.
My name is Martin Zarevelt, Port Alberni, 2520 8th Avenue. What we've done is we've started a development previously right before the flood level change, right before submission, 3.5 meter increase on the land, so then we had to go for a full redesign. The second one we've just developed, or we've submitted for, the bylaw for Airbnb zoning changed, and we had to go in for another redesign. So now we're into... The building industry is having problems keeping up with the bylaw changes and the amendments and the things that are happening. So I've just tried to keep a really vague footprint for what we would like to do here until we get some clear direction in order to not waste any more time and energy into hopes and dreams and directions that may not be viable. So what we're trying to do is locally source net zero homes and trying to lead by an example of making good products. And I'm looking for directions for the Odyssey Lane in a way that it works for, the environment, everybody here, but most foremost my client, Frederick, and go from there.
Any questions to the applicant from council? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for your time.
And there is a staff recommendation. Would council like to make that motion?
I've got it. I will move that council authorize the Director of Community Planning to execute and issue environmental development permit DP 22-16 for the property at 736 Odyssey Lane to allow the construction of a single-family dwelling on a lot designated within a terrestrial ecosystem and marine shoreline development permit area.
And a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson. Further discussion? You're okay with the wording of that, Councillor Kennington?
I would rather it said vacation rental, but I'm sure that the planning department will make sure that it's done according to the rules.
Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that motion carries. Are there any notices of motion? Okay, correspondence. There are 2 correspondence items from the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities. Would council like to bring either item forward for discussion? No? Okay, we'll move on then. Mr.
This is where you'll insert your 2 late agenda items as items. That's the next 2 items on your correspondence.
Okay, we've got 10.3 and 10.4, which were the late items. The first one is Alberni Clayoquot Health Network Table of Partners 2022 call for members. This, the deadline for applying for this is December 13th, which is why I brought it forward as a late item, because our next council meeting is actually December 13th, so that would be too late to do anything about this. Before you is a description of what the Table of Partners does and how often they meet. And I believe they are allowing meeting by Zoom, so you don't have to attend in person if you don't want to. I was wondering if Councillor Anderson might be interested in putting his name forward for this.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Good idea?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay, may I have a motion to have Councillor Anderson apply for the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network Table of Partners?
I will move that Councillor Anderson apply
Can I have a
to the
sec-
Alberni Clayoquot Health Network Table of Partners.
Can I have a seconder?
Oh, I'll definitely second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. So there is an application form for you to fill out, Councillor Anderson, that is in this package. And the second item is the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network Transportation Action Table. And the terms of reference have been included at the back of this package. And I would like to carry on the work I've been doing with this group for the last 8 years. It's been fairly inactive the last 5 years, but it's being brought forward again because BC Transit has pulled out of the West Coast to give us a bus system. So we the Transportation Action Table has gotten back into action, and hopefully we come up with some outside the box options for a transportation system on the West Coast. So I believe I need a motion to have me attend those meetings, the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network Transportation Action Table.
I will move that Council authorize Mayor McEwen to represent the District of Ucluelet on the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network Transportation Action Table.
Thank you. And a seconder?
I'll second that.
And any further discussion?
Get a bus system.
Get a bus system for sure. That's That's the goal. All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Information items. There are two information items. And I think we'll just look at the first one, the resolution tracking. Mr. Rotenberg.
So this is a report that we bring forward monthly. It records the resolutions that are made during council meetings. It doesn't record procedural resolutions, for example, that we adopt the agenda as presented. We track those, but we put them somewhere else, so if we ever have to go back and find them, we can. We've added a category. Traditionally, there was 3 categories assigned: in progress and complete. The new category is no further action. And we've added this category because there have been some resolutions that have languished on this resolution tracker. And much of the time, that's beyond the control of staff. So those resolutions, which we've assigned as no further action, we're planning to remove from the tracker. Are there any questions I can attempt to field?
Any questions from council? I have a question about the third one. Third one. That staff work with BlackRock to identify unique solutions for navigating to the resort. It says it's complete, but I haven't seen any signs, so I'm just wondering, I guess this would be the planning department if...
I could probably answer that, Mayor McEwen.
Okay.
We have met with the BlackRock representatives. So it's now we've discussed it. It's really within their hands now. There's no further action that we can take. They are looking at submitting a request to council for consideration of the installation of sign along Peninsula Road to achieve whatever it is that they're wanting to achieve. So that would come as a request from the BlackRock or any other business that wants to install a sign. It's really within their purview to come to council saying, we would like to do this. Here's what it's going to look like. It's compliant with the bylaws. And then a report would come forward to council from staff inclusive of that request. So the reason that we're putting that as complete is that for discussionary aspects of that resolution to work with them, we're done. It's now in the hands of the BlackRock.
That makes sense. Great. Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Lawrence. Any other questions from council? Okay, and then the last one was just a welcome. So we're on to mayor's announcements and council committee reports. Councillor Anderson, what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? So I attended that bilateral meeting on NetPen transition plan with local government and DFO, and it was an interesting meeting. So there was quite a few people from the island present. There's probably almost 30 people by Zoom or Microsoft Teams on that, and so it's obviously the tradition or the transition from open net pens and some of the struggles that are going on the island with that, and I guess DFO wants to interface with local government as much as possible and First Nations on that. So it was actually interesting to learn what's going on there, just the economic development going forward. One example would be in Gold River, they've shut down the mill there, and they're going to be moving some of the open net pen sites inland to the mill site. And then so now they have an issue with staffing it, and having staff accommodations. So it's sort of all the issues that may be popping up as this moves along. So there's going to be more meetings as things move on. North Island College is involved as well with some of the upskilling or retraining or what have you. There's quite a few different parts to this. The workforce element, the training, and yeah, just sort of moving this industry a little different. And of course, there's quite a bit of interfacing with First Nations as well. So this sort of I think this was the second meeting, I think, and then there's going to be a series moving down. So yeah, it was good to attend that for sure.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Anderson? Councillor Hoare.
I've had a quiet couple of weeks, other than the Barclay Community Forest open house, which Councillor Anderson was at too. Yeah, just I have my first Vancouver Island Regional Library Board meeting this Saturday, so that'll be interesting, and for the next meeting.
You will enjoy those. Are you attending in person, correct?
Not this one.
Oh, not this one, but the AGM you will be. Right. Any questions for Councillor Hoare?
As backup on that, do I attend that as well? Or is it just the one of us goes?
Just the one of us. It's if I can't, then you will. Then you would have the option to attend. But I'm going to get all that orientation on Saturday morning early. So I'll let you know for sure. But you don't need to attend this one. So
Great, thank you. Councillor Kennington.
Nothing to report.
You're not going to tell us about Thailand?
I took a Thai cooking course and I botched the cow soy.
So you're not cooking dinner for us, is what I'm hearing.
I nailed the coconut shrimp curry.
That sounds wonderful.
I didn't want to brag, so I.
Any questions for Councillor Kennington?
Can I have the recipe?
Absolutely, they sent me the recipe book.
Nice. Welcome back, by the way. Councillor Mafti is still away. For myself, November 16th and 17th, I attended the ACRD training in Port Alberni. Day one was regional governance, and one of the presenters was Brian Carruthers, and he was the person that we hired to take us through our strategic planning session 4 years ago. So it was really nice to see him again. The second day was First Nations land management and a cultural workshop. That was presented by Chief John Rampanen of Howsett, and that was the second time in 8 years I've taken that workshop from him, and it goes way back to the history of First Nations, way before First Contact and everything up to date. So worthwhile training sessions there. The next day, November 18th, I had my first ICE-T meeting via Zoom, and I didn't realize that mayors are automatically on the ICE-T board of directors. So that was a surprise. 6 projects were recommended to move forward for a total of $885,000. So it was a real eye opener what sort of projects ICE-T actually funds. And I should tell you what it stands for: Island Coastal Economic Trust. They are looking for a new funding model. They're applying to the province to get a sum of money that they will invest, and then from now on simply use the interest from that money to fund projects, which is not how they have been doing it. They have been just using up the pot of money as projects came forward. So a new funding model for them. Hopefully it goes well. November 21st, I attended the West Coast Transportation Working Group via Zoom. We reviewed the assets and the opportunities that exist here on the West Coast and identified actions to move transportation projects forward. So our CAO was on that one as well, and I think there were some actions identified that various people will be implementing to get something happening. November 23rd, I went to the ACRD board meeting in Port Alberni. The most interesting part of that is that there's going to be a by-election for electoral area F, Cherry Creek. So the Supreme Court of British Columbia ruled November 21st that the 2022 general election for the office of Director for Electoral Area F, Cherry Creek, is invalid. Voters in this electoral area will be returning to the polls in the coming months. Due to a very close result and several incomplete voter registration forms, the results of the 2022 electoral area F election were uncertain under the law. To ensure the integrity of the electoral process, the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District filed a petition with the Supreme Court in early November, seeking that the election be declared invalid. So that seat is now vacant on the ACRD, and the ACRD will be footing a pretty hefty bill for the by-election. And there is information about it on the ACRD website if anybody is interested in learning more about that. And on Sunday, I attended Ted Eftink's Celebration of Life here at the community center. The room is at capacity or beyond. Don't tell the fire department. They were all there anyway. It was a really, really nice celebration of life, and yeah, was really happy to be there. Any questions for me?
I have one. With ICE-T's new funding model, I know they've funded a number of things in the district. Is it going to affect the, I want to say, volume of funding that's available, I'm guessing, in the future?
Possibly. I didn't ask that question because they've just been using up the pot as projects came up. It was still invested, earning interest, I'm sure, but yeah, now they're just going to spend the interest. So they may be funding fewer projects, I'm guessing. Yeah. Anything else for me? Okay, question period. This is an opportunity for the public to ask questions and provide comments on items that have been addressed on today's agenda. Items not related to today's agenda will not be heard. Are there any questions from the audience? Hearing none. Are there any questions by Zoom or telephone, Mr. Rotenberg?
Please click the raise your hand icon if you have any questions. Or *9 if you're on a telephone. No hands are raised this time.
Have we received any questions via email to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
Not at this time.
All right. I will move that the meeting be closed to the public in order to address agenda items under Section 91N of the Community Charter. The remaining of the meeting will be closed to the public.
I will second that.
And all in favor? Carried. The remainder of the meeting will be closed to the public at 5:47.